Hey guys, we're on. Apologize for the length of time. So I know we're supposed to go on at 12, but we're still testing everything. So I figured get on early, fix the audio, and believe me, the audio needs fixing. There's something wrong with mine, but before we move any further, let's do an audio check real quick. Everyone who's here, let us know how audio check sounds. So we're here at MWAVE. Brian,
what's up, guys? How are we?
Guys? So we're gonna have fun. Brian's gonna try to. This is something we've never done before, right? So I'll be answering questions. Brian's gonna go up in front of the room and do his intro and do his magic, right? And we're gonna try to get this right because we're kind of practicing also when we're hosting Valley Electronics Shootout in October. We're gonna be the talent, so to speak, the fun, right? So give us your questions. One of us will be manning the questions while the other will be doing the talk and whatnot. And thank you guys. Oh, you can hear us both. All right, let's add. Oh, so this is how you add to the broadcast.
Lizo, how are you?
See, add to broadcast. Let's put.
Oh, you got me doing. I can't do all that. You do that.
All right. I'll do all this. So, this is the first time Brian's seeing this program. So it's like, put up with us for a second. And all right, maybe I'll put you right here. But I'm so glad you guys are here and putting up with our craziness. As you guys can see, we're just having fun trying to live stream on location. We are in Kansas City at MWAVE. Brian is at MWAVE. Heck yeah, look at that, right? Brian's
what's up, guys?
MWAVE.
How are you?
Can you believe it?
Chris, what's up, baby?
So these are the people. Hello, hello, hello. We're gonna have fun. You guys see all the TVs are up there, right? We have, oh, let me move this around a bit. So it's accurate. This is the Sony, it's here. LG is there. So I know what you're saying. Where the heck is the S90C?
Take it off, Brian.
Oh, let's put this down here.
All right, man.
Where is the S90C?
Good seeing you, brother.
And you guys will love this story. It's maybe I'm cursed. Just as Jason Dustal finishes the calibration, we're saying, my gosh, the S90C is so great. I can't wait to move it, right? And then it stops working. It literally turns off. We're like, what? It's not turning on. And so it appears to be a power board issue. It literally died. When you hit the power remote, the power button on the remote, you see the red flash on the TV. The TV doesn't come on. And so we do all these things like, no. Oh.
And it didn't even die in a way that was
with a whimper?
like break or blow up. It literally just the remote was like, hey.
It's not turning on.
So we had to put the remotes outside because they're solar powered to try and get that to work.
We thought it was a remote, so we powered the remote. It turns out we just got a bad unit. So, and because Samsung is closed, Samsung distributors are closed on the weekend, we couldn't get a replacement in time for you guys. So I apologize for that. So what we have here is the 65-inch QM8, $1,200. The 65-inch U7K at $850. The U8K never made it here. So although it left my studio, it won't arrive until Monday, so we couldn't even get it here to compare, so it couldn't even be part of the giveaway.
Yeah.
So U7K is here, logistics, right? This is what happens. The A95K, $2,800, the G3, $2,900, the G2, $3,400 currently,
good, how are you?
83-inch, and the 98-inch QN90A. So the way I've angled it is to give each TV a chance to shine, but obviously you're going to have off-angle issues. So I try to get it angled well. We're going to do all different sorts of lighting conditions so that our people can see. And well, you're going to see Brian do his thing. Brian, ready to do your thing?
Do my thing.
So we're going to give people the demos that you guys have been enjoying all year, but in person.
Is it better seeing it in a regular movie?
We're going to have a lot of fun, I think. So people are coming and going to MWAVE.
I am.
We are going to cover all of MWAVE actually, but today we're going to cover what we're doing here, which is TV comparisons, the best TVs of the last 2 years. But there's some amazing stuff happening at MWAVE. What I'm really looking forward to is basically the surround.
The blessing and the curse
between
of
Trinov,
comparisons is exactly what you said.
right? And
So
we'll go through
what we
all
talk
that.
about a lot
Some
is
I'm
what
gonna
you
try to
have is
compare
already
with
good.
My spatial audio.
Or what you buy is already good.
Let's kick it off.
You wouldn't see the discrepancies if they weren't together.
Yeah.
Especially
Brian?
something like, yes.
You're up.
Especially something like the UK
And I'll be answering
the
Q&A.
U7K.
So this is us trying to play with our
$800,
venue.
65 inches.
We're giving this venue to do whatever we
QM8
want, so.
at $2,200 is 85 inches versus the $3,000. Right, so you say to yourself, it looks pretty good, but I'd rather have the larger TV.
It's so similar
But
to
the comparisons are,
but it's at a great
and it
value.
depends on the
Unfortunately,
content in the bright room.
Just power board death. right after we calibrated it. Now, all these TVs are calibrated.
Do you have any questions about any of the TVs at all? No, you guys are good. Any
And
questions?
it's really good.
Talk to me.
The colors match.
It's a 98-inch Samsung QN90A. So that is,
Yes, we
let me
are
get the
at
remote
MWAVE.
so I can
MWAVE
start the
stands
demo
Midwest
for you
Audio
guys.
Video
Hold on one
Experience.
second.
If you just Google MWAVE 2023 MWAVE at Kansas
Scusi.
City, and you get to see Brian do his thing. He's like he was saying, I feel like a Best Buy salesman. So this is great. Thank you. Both of our microphones.
So
I
the
know,
TVs that we have
Brian's,
tonight,
talking
or today
over
I
it,
should
so
say,
I should
is
have taught how to
from
Brian
left
keep
to
the
right.
mute button. But
Top left hand is a mini-LED
Hey,
TCL.
Brian, your mic is on, so
It's on?
it's on. It's always on.
All right. I had more people watching last time, but it's you guys that matter. So we have the TCL QM8, top left. Bottom left is the Hisense U7K. They're both mini LED technology. Upper right is the Sony A95K Quantum Dot OLED. The one below that is the G3 micro lens OLED, G2 OLED, Samsung QN90A mini LED. So the TVs on the outside are all mini LED. The TVs on the inside are OLEDs.
And they've all been calibrated?
They've all been calibrated. They're in their most accurate preset.
That's interesting.
However, on the fly, I can change any of them to a preset that would either help or hurt them.
Yeah, I just like a level field, you know.
Yep, Jason Dustal, who's walking in right now, had calibrated them all. And again, they're all in their most accurate preset.
Something broken? Did I say something?
Now, each panel is different to calibrate. Some are easier than others. Some don't have the calibrating settings, right, Jay?
Yeah, that's the big challenge. It's like, finding the TV that has all the controls that you need to actually do it, and that the controls are granular enough to where you can fine tune, and the adjustments actually do what they're supposed to do.
And for the mini LEDs,
It's really hard to do.
directly on,
I heard you say earlier.
huge difference,
Yeah,
right? So
Go there, it's like, they don't look good.
you're like, damn, yeah, it's definitely. But something like the QM8 TCL is really leading the lead this year as affordable. Very bright, beautiful image quality. The Hisense U7K is cheaper. It's not the highest end. That's the one in the corner. And that one,
Feels on the bottom right.
TCL is the top left.
Oh,
So the Hisense is the bottom left.
okay.
Now the Hisense U7K is $800 at 65 inches. I have one at home. I love it. It's great.
TCL, but I got the old, like,
All right, let's introduce Jason to
Yeah.
explain
Here, take.
his calibration. Here I got on myself. His calibration. Go ahead, talk. And Jason, let us know your calibration approach, your observations,
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
So these events are always really fun because you get to really see what the displays are doing next to each other. And you don't always get that luxury, especially when we're trying to look at different TVs and showroom environments where some are set to their brightest modes and some are set to energy savings modes, and you just don't really know what you're looking at. So the point of these events is to come in and put them all on the same level playing field, and that's why they're all calibrated to the same standards that are used throughout the entire production industry, whether it's Hollywood or TV or whatnot. The whole point of it is I want to match my TV at home or my projector at home as close to the monitor that they use to make the film or the TV show. So we're trying to just preserve the artistic intent of the cinematographers and the directors and whatnot as best as we can. So the approach is we come in a few days early. I came in Tuesday evening, and we started unboxing all the TVs and giving them a little bit of time to break in. You do want to let them kind of warm up and run a couple natural cycles before you start doing some hardcore color correction to them. They do tend to drift over time, especially when they're brand new. So we come in, we put some hours on them, run some test patterns, and once they're all nice and warmed up, we take something like this. This is called a colorimeter. You can think of it like a camera that you put in front of the screen. So I use something like this, which is called a test pattern generator. That puts different colors and different patches on the screen and different visual test patterns for setting things like brightness and contrast. So my test patterns hit the screen, boom. My light meter reads the color of the test pattern coming off the screen, and then with software I can see the data coming from that light meter, and depending on the measurement versus the target, I grab the remote, go into the TV's menu, and make my adjustments. So a analogy, if you're coming from an audio background, is you take a microphone, you send out test tones, you look at your measurements, you change things, readjust, and you just do it all over again until you're happy. So that's the whole point of doing it with video. So what we've done in this room for this event is we've calibrated all of them for a nighttime mode for standard dynamic range, so your normal everyday TV type stuff. We've calibrated a day mode and a night mode, so lights on, lights off. And we've also run through and calibrated as much as we can and gotten some analysis on the HDR performance. But I was really happy to see with all these with each other. The two TVs over here on the left, so the TCL is up top and the Hisense is at the bottom. We're starting to see some really, really impressive numbers from some of these, what we would normally consider like entry-level TVs, but they're doing such a good job right now. In fact, even with my own picky eye, there's been a few scenes that I've noticed, more in SDR than HDR, but there have been a few scenes I've noticed where just upon a quick glance, the TCL looks pretty darn close to the Sony that's next to it. And that's it's a what, 5x price difference, I think, something right around something like that. It's a big difference in price. So to see this really good performance out of these, you know, lower tiered, what we used to consider lower tiered TVs, are now getting up to be really high performance and good value for your money. There's still a few quirky things that, you know, the super geeks like me will pick apart about it, but overall they're but HDR performance has been really good. We're seeing some really nice differences that I wasn't able to see before because I've never had these in the room next to each other like this, but just seeing the differences between the two more popular videophile, if you want to say that, TVs, the Sony A95K, and just below that's the LG. And seeing those two next to each other in as fair as possible, you can start to see some subtle differences. That's really fun. But seeing the different technologies, the OLEDs versus the LCDs, and seeing what fits your lifestyle better and what you like to watch and where you sit and your room lighting and all these different things, it's nice to be able to come in here and just see them all in their purest form, hence which is why we calibrate. Now, we could, if we wanted to, do an event like this where we leave all the TVs in their factory modes or out-of-the-box modes, but with no reference, you have no idea what you're looking at. And it just becomes a, well, that one looks better to me. And when we're talking about doing things at this level, again, we're trying to preserve the intent of the artist. So what looks good to me versus you, in that sense, is a little irrelevant. What we're worried about really is accuracy. But when it comes to certain things like TV shows and older stuff, you know, you might have your personal preferences, and that's totally fine. But the purists out there want to see it exactly how it was intended. And that's the whole point is doing these events, is get them as close as they can. Let's put them all in a room next to each other and see which ones really shine. So hopefully that helps my ramblings. If there's any questions, feel free.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you point out some of your geeky differences that
Yes, there's a few.
would help me?
Yeah, there's a few obvious ones. Yeah, and there's a couple of them. Lights, yep.
I think I have a mic issue. So,
Oh, your mic, my mic, a mic
A mic, probably your mic. Let me turn this one off and switch it off to this one.
is broke.
No bueno. Okay, I'm gonna have to replace this one.
Mic check, mic check.
Just hold it. Right. Like Bob Barker.
What's up, crew? We got.
Okay.
Let me see if that's better.
I'm gonna sit on my lap.
If not, I have to use yours.
What just fell off here? What are these?
So one of the things that we're all concerned with these days with these newer generation TVs is something called color volume. And you can think of color volume as how bright can the picture be with still very deep saturated color.
How we doing, guys?
Traditionally, as the display gets brighter, especially with the WRGB OLEDs, as the display gets brighter, the colors
Like Blair
tend to
Witch Project.
desaturate. So one of the scenes that we're going to look at here is
The
to
black
show off
level
color
is
volume.
sick in this.
And
My mic
we're going to
doesn't
look at a
like
really bright scene,
that. Alex.
but there's a few TVs in here that outshine others when it comes to how saturated the colors are in the bright scenes. I'm gonna find a very specific one here that I noticed before. And once you, it's just one of those things. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
What? I didn't push anything.
Maybe you shouldn't. Yeah, because once you
went to the
kind of start
bathroom
to,
with a hot mic,
it's like
though.
some of these demo rooms for audio. I'm really an audio
What's up,
guy in
Lisa?
disguise, to be honest. But like, hey, do you want to hear these new ones? And I'm like, no, I don't. I no, because
We got watching.
right, exactly. Yeah, it's like I'm gonna come to this event spending money,
Can't see.
which is fine. It's toys.
How
It's
many
good stuff.
numbers we got? We got
The A95K is upper. I'm sorry, say it again. The one in the middle is 83 OLED. Yeah.
Slowly building to a
Find the chapter.
up,
Bottom
everybody?
right
How we doing?
is a G3.
Am I on?
I
Yes.
think so.
Correct. Well, the one in the middle is a 2,
One of my
a
pockets.
G2. Yeah. So, by the way, great disc.
We got Mario Brothers playing in the background. by the way.
The new Mario Brothers. Very visually stimulating
Oh, the camera even on?
and fun. Especially, if you play the game as a kid, all the little nods and sound effects. And so what you should look for here in these scenes where there's a very deep saturated orange, notice the difference in the amount of orange on the bottom TV of these two versus on top.
Is he holding a microphone? Is he holding a microphone?
You'll notice the oranges especially are just a little more saturated on the bottom TV because the bottom TV has more color volume. Now these are subtle differences for the most part. But if your goal buying a TV is I'm a big cinema guy, I want my movies to look as perfect as they can, I want them to be as accurate as they can, these are the subtle differences that we have to start picking apart. And these other TVs make a great picture. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. There's things about the expensive ones that we pick apart, and there's things about the cheap ones that we love. And none of them are perfect. The whole point is to use your judgment and your knowledge to make the best, smartest compromises that you can, and that has to do with everything. Room lighting is the big one. How far away you sit from the screen. What angle do you sit at the screen? Is the TV mounted high or is it eye level? What do you like to watch? Do you watch more sports? Do you watch more movies? There's just a million different questions to figure out what TV is right for you. If you're a gamer, that could make a difference too, of course. But typically, in that example, you'll see those oranges and stuff that are a lot more saturated. But there's a few other scenes too where there's some reds and some skin tones and a few other things.
How you doing?
Which just got a little more oomph to it when it comes to color. Now, with that being said, color is not the most important aspect of picture quality. It's actually contrast. And when you start looking at the two OLEDs, the quantum dot OLED, and you start looking at those together, and they all have great dynamic range. The easiest way to tell is look at the black bars in the movie. They're black. And on an LCD, they tend to not be black. They're usually like a darker gray. And in some worst case scenarios, it's a light gray. So we want as much contrast as possible, which is why people like the OLED. Now, if you can go really, really bright and really, really dark, that's cool. But you also have to remember you want to preserve your shadow details too. So there is such thing as too much. You want as much dynamics as possible, but still seeing all the details in the image. It'd be really easy to crank up the white level and crank down the black level and get this huge contrast ratio number, but who cares if it doesn't look good? The pink in her dress is pretty obvious there too. But that's what color volume gets you.
What's up, guys?
And here's the really fun part about all of this. We're nowhere
Long
near
days, my
what the
friends,
spec
long
is
days.
capable of. The specification for HDR and Dolby Vision is way beyond what the products can actually do today. So this is the beginnings of it. And we're going to look back at this one day and say, wow, we used to watch
They'll
that?
move in a
Yeah,
second.
exactly.
They're only in here
But
for
that's
10 minutes.
progression. I mean, if anyone's been buying nicer TVs for at least 5 years, the progression in just the last 5 years has been incredible.
Oh, yeah, you can go in front of the
In
camera.
fact,
It's okay.
I can tell you this with
Just jump over,
100%
brother. It's all
honesty.
good.
If I saw this $600 TV and saw some of the numbers it posted when I was measuring it 5 years ago, I would have said, oh, this is some high-end reference monitor. 5, 7 years ago, maybe, And now we're getting to a point where, for about that price range, you can get something that's pretty darn good. Now, the really challenging part, the most challenging thing for any imaging device is always going to be shadow detail. And that's where things can get really fun. Because now it's hard. It's really hard because, you know, there's a relationship between the amount of signal input and the amount of light output. It's called gamma. And if that relationship is not ratioed correctly, you're going to lose things like shadow details.
I watched I watched the projector that was a Sony. Watched
Oh, yeah.
and it was real dark.
How's it going? How are you?
You just couldn't see it. Yeah, yeah. But that's, you know, that's the whole point. You know, the people who are making these films and TV shows,
So,
they're not going to miss something like, oh, we forgot to put shadows in this part of the picture. They're not going to forget stuff like that. You know, but the TV needs to be set up in such a way that you can actually see that stuff. And that's why I'll always be a big advocate for, you know, getting a TV home.
The next one is an
Unboxing it, getting it put in the right spot, sit in the right spot, take it out of the factory picture modes, turn off all the energy saving stuff, turn off all the motion enhancement stuff. You know, but that's the thing, if you're a purist, that's what we want is accuracy. Now there's a flip side to that too. For me to have a nice accurate picture, I technically need to be in a really dark room. And that's not always realistic. You know, these TVs go in people's living rooms, stuff like that. So in some cases, because of, you know, how you use your TV, you might need something that's screaming bright. And in that case, the OLED's probably not going to do it for you. So it's so important to just really think about like what you're going to use the TV for before you pick one out. That's why when people come to me and say, what's the best TV? I say, well, you got 30 minutes? Right, exactly. What's the best screwdriver? Phillips or regular?
I'll tell you one thing I wish that the TVs would do, which I hate the soap opera effect.
Sure.
I wish that they had it a little bit easier to figure out because half the time it takes me forever.
So, yeah, the comment is it takes forever to find some of the motion processing features in the menu. And I really appreciate that comment because as a calibrator, I have to know every single one of these menus inside and out. And I have to know where everything is, where to turn off, what to leave on, all these other things. And what doesn't help us is that every manufacturer calls it whatever they want, and they put it in whatever submenu they want. So you've really got to do some research sometimes and figure out, okay, what do they call their motion processing? Where is it in the menu? Where's the ambient light sensor? Because the TV keeps going dim and bright on me. I need to turn that off. What do they call it? Where is it? It's just all these little things.
Watching, my sister got a new LG.
Yeah.
And great picture and all that, but then all of a sudden we had the soap opera effect, and my nephew was like, I hate this,
Yeah.
I have to turn it off.
Where is it?
20 minutes
Yeah,
trying to
exactly.
turn it off.
Yeah, you know, and to that point, I'll give you a little bit of a tip. On most of the current generation TVs, you'll see picture modes like filmmaker mode, or in LGs and others, you'll see like ISF modes, cinema modes, theater modes, things like that. In most cases, when you're talking about those picture modes, a lot of that stuff that you just mentioned about energy savings and motion, a lot of that stuff is turned off by default because those are out of the box the closest ones to being correct. So they're going to turn off a lot of that extra processing and a lot of that stuff. But what it might not turn off is energy savings things. So you've turned off the motion processing by putting the TV in the right mode, but the energy savings stuff is still on. So now the picture's super dark. So you're like, okay, now I got to go in and find this other thing. Yeah, so there's there's several different things you got to look for, and there's some really good resources online. There's a bunch of really great, and I'm so happy to see this because, you know, up until the last few years, a lot of this was sort of just tribal knowledge, and you had to like just know somebody who did it a lot or something like that. But nowadays with internet and YouTube and you know all these good reviewers and stuff like that, you know, they're going to go through, and most likely the good reviewers are going to tell you where those things are, what they're called. So, you know, before you buy a TV, you know, do your research. We all like to say that, but just really think about what you want your TV to do for you. And, you know, is picture quality important? Does it need to be really bright? You know, what are your viewing angles like? You know, just don't go into, not to say anybody in here would do this, but you know, just don't go into a store and just point at one and say, I like that one. You're going to end up making the wrong decision.
The ones over here on the left side, what size are those?
So all 4 of those are 65s. So go 65, 83, 98. Here's one thing about the TCL I noticed. And you really can't see this unless you get really close on an animated film like this. But in real live content, you can see it much easier. What I'm talking about is something called edge enhancement. What most people know that as is the sharpness control on their TV. So you see something called sharpness in your TV, and you go, I want a sharper picture, so what do you do with the control? You crank it, right? And that's the wrong way to go. You should go down with the sharpness control in most cases. And the point is you don't want the TV adding anything extra into the image. It can cause these weird artifacts around people's faces and just all kinds of nasty stuff. So one thing I noticed about the TCL is when we're feeding it a 4K HDR signal, there's edge enhancement turned on that you can't turn off. So if you're sitting really close to the image, you might see some more artifacts than you would sitting closer to a TV where the sharpness was adjusted appropriately. And these are the little things that we kind of talk about when we say, you know, great TV, it's really good at this, this, and this, but I wish it did this. And that's just one example. But on an animated film like this, you'd have to get really close to the screen to see that. But I've got a test pattern we can look at also where it's very obvious. I think I'm going to fire that up, actually. Let's grab that. Yeah. So this image that we're going to look at is a reference image that I look at all the time as I'm calibrating. It's really good because it's got really vibrant colors, realistic colors. It's got some skin tones and shadow details. It's a really good reference image to just sort of look at these things, figure out what's going on. So as soon as this test pattern fires up, oh, did I miss something? The beauty of working in the dark. Oh, did it go? Not yet. I don't know about you guys, but I find it important to charge the battery-driven device before I use it. Let's see. Where did I put that? Charger. I'll tell you what. What did I hear? Did I hear Fox and Hound? Yeah. Love hearing that. Same story. We're going to look at some skin tones in some very detailed parts of this person's face. Feel free, don't be shy, come up. There's a lot of extra noise in here that just shouldn't be there. And typically when you, if you're from the old school CRT days, this was called ringing. So you'd have, let's say, a straight line, a row of pixels rather, each one of those pixels has edge enhancement. So a straight line looks like it has an outline around it. So multiply that by how many pixels are on the screen. Now you've got all these extra artifacts in the image.
I can't see that.
Yeah, it's subtle. Like I said, it's very, very subtle. But it's there. Yeah. A little bit. Yeah. To me, like if you look at, let me see.
Like this one compared, which one's
Yeah, right.
That's the only one that does do it.
Okay, so all the rest are. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, so.
Yeah. So you'll notice when you're looking at that, there's a much more softer, organic look.
Yeah, no, I see it now.
Yeah.
I know exactly what
Yeah.
The whites look totally different.
It's different.
I mean,
That's
you got bluish white here, don't you think, a little bit?
yeah. But you're right. But to be fair, remember every single technology except for plasma and CRT are going to have some sort of shift when you're off axis. So the best way to really judge the shade of white is to back away so that you're looking at the TVs from all the same angle.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, from right here, there's absolutely a shift where it looks sort of blue. It starts off up here like almost a darker green, you know, but that's obviously at the angle. If I back up to my seating position, I'm now looking at the image more wholly, and those effects go away. And on the OLED, it's not that bad actually. On LCDs, not to pick on any brand, it's an LCD thing, but LCDs get really, really whacked when you're off axis.
I had an NEC 10PG. It's nice that you mentioned that plasmas and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Still bump into them here and there. Yeah, good color, excellent viewing angles, good dynamic range. Because if the phosphor wasn't hit, it wasn't lit up. So you had good blacks. Great technology, just incredibly heavy and big and expensive to ship and hard to fix.
Yeah. I even had Kevin. Was it Kevin Miller?
Oh, Kevin, yeah, he's a good buddy of mine.
He came out and he hadn't calculated that particular. He had to call somebody.
Yeah, Kevin's.
Around, Kevin?
Oh yeah, I talk to him weekly.
So
Yeah.
is that the Samsung OLED panel as opposed to the LG?
Yeah, so Samsung makes the quantum dot OLED hybrid panel. So on the quantum dot OLED hybrid Sonys, they are getting those panels from Samsung. The WRGB OLEDs are all coming from LG. So if it's a WRGB OLED and say a Vizio, that's coming from LG Display, which is not the same as LG. It sounds funny, but it's technically two different entities. So LG Display sells WRGB OLEDs to LG and to all the other manufacturers who want to use that technology.
Say that backwards now.
Right, yeah. It's like Sony Pictures and Sony, consumer stuff. It's,
No, I know what you're saying.
it sounds weird, but it's just,
That's just the way it is.
we had a conversation one time between a Sony, one of the TV engineers and one of the projector engineers, because we were trying to convince the team that works on the TVs to put in some of these advanced calibration settings that they didn't have, but the projectors did. So like, guys, just take that menu and put it in that, and they go, I don't even know this guy. Like, we're not on the same team. We don't work in the same building. Like, but it's funny like that. But a couple things that you'll notice too, when the image gets paused, it's sitting here still like this, you'll notice the OLEDs will get a little bit dimmer over time. They'll gradually get just a little bit dimmer, and that's just to save the power supply and to save the panel from any kind of image retention.
Yeah, there are ones that can burn, right? Is it OLEDs that burn?
You can burn anything, honestly.
Oh, really?
If you try hard enough, you can burn anything. Yeah, yep, you can burn anything if you try hard enough. But CRTs, because of the phosphors, those burn really easily. We still see TVs here and there where they've got Pac-Man levels burned into them. Still see that sometimes. Plasmas burned really easily, unfortunately, but if you treated them well and took care of them, you could avoid that, right? And now the OLEDs, of course, you can still burn those, but the heat sinks and the heat dissipation is really the key there to avoid that. And they've done a really good job lately. So input signal goes in, light comes out, light makes heat gets dissipated better, TV operates better.
They just said that this year, right?
Yeah, they put the new heat sink in this year, yeah. Or maybe it was 2022. Yeah, because I remember it was funny. The first time I unboxed a 65C2, we took the lid off, got all the styrofoam out, and we went to lift it, and it felt weird. You know how like at big box stores you'll have a dummy Blu-ray player on the shelf? There's nothing in it, and it feels really light. You lift up the TV, and I went, "Is this? What's happening in here?" Yeah. So super light, super efficient. But you can see now it's much dimmer. Yeah. Yeah. So it's to save the panel, it's to save the power supply. Yeah.
That's just a fail-safe.
It's a protection. Yep. Now, if you want to get squirrely, you can turn that off. I certainly wouldn't recommend most people to do it, but in certain aspects, it makes sense. Like in Hollywood, for example, if someone's color grading a film and they need to stop on this frame and work on it and make it look the way they want it to, and it might take a minute, an hour, who knows? Depends on how much work they're going to put into it. You can't have the image dimming on you. So there are some times where it's appropriate to turn that stuff off, but not recommended for general use. No, you need a service remote, and it's a whole code you got to put in, and it's a whole thing. It's very questionable on what happens with your warranty if you do stuff like that. But I just wanted to point that out in case anyone sees it on camera and says, "Why is that so much darker?" Yeah, it just goes dim over time.
I just saw a video on that where they were talking about buying a service remote for like $20 on Amazon
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
And you just plug in the numbers.
Yeah. It's not that hard to find the information, but it's really hard to convince LG that you didn't do that when your TV is broken.
Oh yeah, yeah. When they open it or whatever, it's like.
Yeah. Well, in most cases too, since the TVs are online now, I specifically know of at least one manufacturer who can tell when you went into the service menu down to the time and what you changed and when you got out of the service menu. So the service tech comes up to the house and, the days of, I don't know what happened, I just turned it on one day and it did that, those days are long gone because now they can see what happened.
With the service remote just sitting there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right, exactly. With instead of instructions printed out from the internet how to do it. Yeah. Yeah, just did it like that one day. But yeah, so hopefully that helps, guys. Feel free to ask questions.
I had a pair of Pioneer speakers designed by Andrew Jones.
Oh, the Andrew Jones versions? Those are awesome. Great value.
So one of the tweeters or something blew out, I didn't ever play it loud. Oh yeah, you played it loud.
Yeah. Like you really did some good work on this one.
He honored it one time. They would honor
Hey.
it. He was a good guy about it, but
When manufacturers do stuff like that, that just makes me appreciate them even more.
yeah.
I had an issue recently with a set of headphones. They were 1 month out of warranty, and the company was like, "No worries, here's an RMA." And I was like, "You know what?
They make customers that way.
Yeah." It's like, "I'll buy more from you in the future because you took care of me." So it's pretty cool.
What do you charge to calibrate?
So good question. You have to think of it almost in levels. So I'll give you a good example. This happened to me recently. A person called me up and he said, "Hey, I just had this TV and surround sound installed." He's like, "I spent a lot of money and I'm just not quite happy with it. Your name came up somewhere. Can you come just take a look? Let me know what you think." So I showed up and it was a really big, nice TV, top floor condo, giant windows everywhere, and nice surround sound system. Everything seemed to be proper, but the TV and the amplifier, the receiver, were not set up correctly at all. So we started looking at some test patterns together and noticed there were some issues. So just looking at some test patterns, we were standing there next to each other, said, "Okay, what do you see? Here's what I see. Do you see that too? What do you see? Here's what you're supposed to see. Do you see that?" And just going through the motions together. So after about a half an hour of that, looking at test patterns together and trying to figure it all out, he was happy. So I went through, I adjusted some of his speaker levels and got that all sorted out. I think I was there for 90 minutes. I think I charged the guy like $150. Now that's a big difference between, hey, I just bought this TV. I want full calibration for a day mode, a night mode, an HDR mode, a game mode, a Dolby Vision mode. That becomes a 6 or 7 hour ordeal. And now we're $500 to $700. And it could be anywhere in between. My own system at home, I calibrated a day mode because why not? I never use it. So if I'm doing a basement system for somebody or a dedicated theater where they're like, "I don't have any windows, I don't need a day mode," then it's, you did a little cheaper,
your
right?
time,
So it's really the time and you know, the gear the gear takes a long time to pay for, you know, but yeah, I mean, anywhere in between there, you know, it just depends on how crazy you want to go. And it depends on the TV. You know, if it's a TV where there's 10 adjustments and that's all I can do, that's all I can do. The TV got 160 adjustments. How deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go?
Where are you out of?
St. Pete, Florida. Yeah. Yep.
Vacation there many times?
Yeah. It's a great spot, man. I'm one of the few local natives. There's not many of us.
Oh, you're a native?
Yeah, I'm a native. Yeah.
That is a...
1981, born and raised.
Have you calibrated projectors?
We've attempted them. They still have a long way to go. They're fun, right? They, big screen, really bright. You can have the lights on. It's usually not a big deal. They're not quite at the level of precision that we would like to see them at one day. And I think we've talked to some manufacturers. They're jazzed up about making it better. But it's a new product category, and everybody's just kind of figuring out how the lasers work and how the alignment of the screen to the projector work. They want to get all that sorted out first, and then we'll worry about the color correction and all the super nerdy stuff. So we'll get there. You know, but it's a very promising category. They're extremely popular in Asia and Europe, extremely, because they have smaller.
They don't have any space.
They have no room. So you know, you're going into a 400 square foot apartment, and you know, wherever, and they've got a 120-inch picture. Pretty awesome. Right, exactly. So.
One of the interesting things about the difference between Asia, Europe, and the U.S.
Oh yeah.
The U.S. has got space.
Oh yeah. A normal-sized house in Texas would fit 10 families in Europe. You know, it's crazy. But
I have a Hisense,
yeah.
it's supposed to be,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. They're, like I said, they're making strides. It's getting better every year. I'll tell you that. I mean, the last projector shootout we did just a day of ultra short throws, and we made a bunch of measurements and stuff, and they're measuring decent. But what we keep running into is that if there's something I need to fix and there's no control to fix it, I'm dead in the water. So you know, but early TVs were like that too. We think about the old Pioneer plasmas and how much we love those TVs. I only had 6 controls to fix color, whereas I should have 18. So if I fixed one thing about green and it messed up something else about green, there's nothing I could do. So, okay, what's the lesser of two evils here? Do I do this or I do this? And you just had to make these compromises. And you know, nowadays, you jump into a TV like this, or any of them up here for that matter. We go into the advanced settings, down to color, down to white balance. And if I wanted to change my white balance, I can throw a meter up on the screen, look at some test patterns, and change it. No big deal. The controls are there. We go here to fine tune. We can turn this color adjustment on. It's not going to let me do it in HDR. But now I could go in, and I can select between red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, yellow, whatever one needs to be fixed. And then I can say, okay, well, red is undersaturated. Let me saturate it some more. Okay, that's good. Sweet. Now red is too dark, let's brighten red. Okay, now red's a little too orange, let's fix it. Color works in 3 dimensions, light works in 3 dimensions. So I can fix all 3 things about one color. 3 primaries, 3 secondaries, 3 controls each, that's 18 controls. The Pioneer had 6. So I can only fix so much. And that was also assuming that when I moved that control left or right, it actually did something. So, you know, imagine in an audio system. This is what's so funny about audio and video and their little differences. But if you bought a preamp and went to turn the bass up and it didn't do anything, you'd probably be pretty upset. But when you're so deep into a TV like this, most people don't even know. You know. So there's a million different things you can do, and you know, it all comes down to how much time do you want to spend.
How often does a video go in and try to fix, say, the red, and it screws up something else?
That's not supposed to happen, but it does sometimes. Most modern TVs, even the lesser expensive ones, when you're adjusting one color, it does not affect another. And there's a much deeper conversation to be had about that. But in general, if I do something to red, it shouldn't do anything to green. They were a little more affecting of each other in years past, but now that we're getting better and better and better, it's not as much of an issue anymore. There are some controls that are naturally affected by each other, such as black level, white level, gamma, white balance. You can consider that in there as well. So if I change my white balance, I might have altered my black level. So it's a constant like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But that's why you look at test patterns and you look at content. Do my eyes match what the data says? If it does, then everybody's happy. If the data is telling me that the black levels are way too low, and I'm looking at the image and I don't see shadows, then guess what? The black level's too low, you know? So it's just a constant back and forth until you're finally at a point where you're happy. And I tell you, we deal with the professional monitors all the time, and those aren't perfect, and those are very, very, very expensive. So you just got to figure out which one annoys you the least, is what I usually say. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, right, yeah, exactly, yeah.
To me, like, natural content seems great, but I don't know what that crystal thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like.
right.
So,
Yeah.
how do I
So, like,
calibrate to that?
when
Strawberry I can figure out.
yeah, strawberries aren't too bad. Things in nature, like food and landscapes and stuff like that, and skin tones especially, are very easily noticeable. When you're calibrating the display, you're not calibrating it to the content you're looking at on the screen. You're calibrating the display to the same standard that the content was mastered to on that screen, right? So if I have my mastering monitor and my TV at home set to the same white point, then regardless of the colors on the screen, it's the right color. Yeah. So it could be some neon red in Mario Brothers. It could be a very muted blue, like in the show Ozark or something like that. As long as my monitor matches their monitor, everything's good. But that's where the artistic part of it comes in, right? Like, they didn't have to make the Matrix green, but they did it for a specific reason. Now the question is, what green is it supposed to be? I don't know unless my monitor matches theirs. It could be the wrong green, very easily. So, let me go see if that generator's got some juice so we can look at that other test pattern.
So then you end up with,
Let's set this here.
you end up fully waiting 4 years. And
That's why I'm buying this year. I've been bankrolling. I feel like
Yeah.
transition where it's not really this big thing to wait for. And I have people safely design how it's going to be.
You have the little differences are not, one of the little differences are here. If they were here, then you could see it. But behind this, right now, that's the difference. Because you'll know you're missing. So you buy these. I can tell what you're talking about. I don't have it because I don't come with it. So for me, I would say them out. The incremental upgrade is what's not worth a lot of money. With me, I want it to go mini LED because I want it to be right.
It's way
Once I learn the concept, I'm just like, no, but look, the QM8 is a nice little.
You might do that. I mean, you're like,
TV guy.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing is I'm not. It comes off that way because I have access to that. But I always start off doing.
Yeah, it's kind of, I have,
But it's, and it's, you can see the I can, it's not great so far, versus I'm married.
So if you go into, this is only HDR. If you're feeding it regular SDR content, there's a sharpness control that you can turn up. So I'm looking at my test patterns and looking at things like this, and I just go, oh, the sharpness is too high. Let's go ahead and fix it. Okay, well, let's go maybe fix it.
budget.
Movie mode, that's great. There's probably not a sharpness control, the brightness menu, or the color menu, clarity menu.
The difference is,
And it
if
says,
you're not doing flagships, why would you even know? So,
Well, so
here's the sharpness
criticism
control.
of these brands has always been not being historic. So if I didn't do my Best Buy walkthrough, was because I would say, well, you know,
Now, even with it all the way down,
that's why they got in there. Oh, Hisense and TCL.
there's still some in there. It's just, these are just as few little things.
Recommending them not to Now, realistically, I had a U7K review where
Samsung calls it,
because I loved it.
they changed
Then I
it
saw this
too.
one performance.
But I think that was your point before. is Dynamic acceleration.
Now I have to test a third of it just to make sure it's performing. But I was trying to push the gas too fast.
0 to 60 is.
Color saturation. So you notice like, there's other things that
So these are not like,
we
that's
tend
not
to
a
think
box
about too,
settings.
like,
Our plan,
What are they calibrating to
his calibration is they're moving. So,
BT 22?
yeah.
And
So I'm gonna just adjust red and
so
how
he
bright
calibrates
dark
to
red
his
is. So watch right
calibrate
here.
to, I don't know where the remote is this one, the reference level that you see the
See how it got darker?
So that, he doesn't have a monitor here, but that's what they're
But
trying.
there's some value
some of
in what
these are
that
limited
red
to what
is.
you can calibrate, right? Like
That's
when it comes.
TCL going to
So I put up a red test pattern,
since though the high sense was
measure
very
it,
close anyway.
and adjust this.
But I don't always agree with it.
Otherwise, if red was,
This TV
this is
looks
actually
much
letting us
better
hit the
on the
wall,
side
which is
of the
nice.
cinema. It looks better on
Some will
standard.
just kind of let it keep going.
Right,
So
so
if you were to really blow
let
up
me grab the
red,
remote. Hold on.
Yeah.
that way, so I can change the color of red.
The Samsung remote.
Sometimes, and this one's not doing it, so. A lot of these, when you peg it out like this, it's so much that it'll
So
clip
if
the
you were to
signal.
buy
So you start losing some
Samsung
frequencies.
QN90A, I would not recommend watching it like this.
That's what happens when it flips.
Right.
Yeah, when any kind of loss of
People
detail
walk
in
in the
that
store.
sense, something's clipped somewhere.
That's what they say. You see the Samsung, you're walking through Best Buy, that's what
That's
they're
what you see.
How you doing? So when you put it in this most accurate preset, doesn't help it at all.
Quality of the source content.
Alright,
So,
so
like if you're
depends on if you
streaming
like that image more
and
than
it's
you
really
wanted it on
noisy
before.
and
So now
maybe your
going,
internet
now that's
connection's not good
different.
that day or whatever the case might be.
Okay.
The noise
For
reduction
bright
is not
LED,
this
I'd
like
rather
magic
see
thing
more
that's
pop,
gonna
I'd
do.
rather see
Okay.
more
What
processing.
noise reduction is going to do is, let's say you had a dark scene.
Now, because
that's
they're
kind of
calibrated,
noisy, it's
you
going
know,
to stop the
obviously that's right. The plan was to do,
But the way it does it, now you start looking
I
at
thought you were gonna do,
details
like,
of these
best
spaces
out of
in
the
bright
box
room,
settings.
and that's all smudged out. What's happening is you've got this big
But you
patch,
calibrated?
let's say
they had, she was here.
really dark shadow down here,
Why?
there's no
It turned out
information
that way.
there, so you're just seeing noise.
So now that
So,
you, but
in
you've
order to
seen all
stop the
these
noise,
calibrated
they,
before, so.
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
do it in such a way
but
that
at the same time,
it makes
but
that part of
here's
the image
thing,
where all the
having them
noise is at,
calibrated
it's
is
still.
fine. It doesn't matter.
And the way they
Have
do
them
that is they
calibrated.
kind of smush
It's
everything
what
together.
preset you're gonna
So
stay.
now you're looking at something with fine details
So
like
you
this,
can-
and now
This
now
standard
it looks like she's got
preset.
some sort of weird, brush on makeup or something.
Yeah, that's kind of big for me too. Because like with my projectors, I'm constantly tweaking settings.
I mean,
tweaking,
I always say
So-
this, best processing
The
is
subconscious enhancer
but
is
if you have a
high.
really high
right?
quality
So
source and a good display, you shouldn't have to do that
it
stuff.
still has the pop,
It
it's
hurts
more
the,
natural,
it
but it
helps,
looks miles
this is the
better
best way
than
to
it
put it,
did.
it helps the bad stuff and the good stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you watch?
Okay.
Old standard stuff, or you watch?
Some people like it like that. In certain content, it'll look better like
I
that.
mean, I
Right.
fired up
You
an
know,
old episode of
so
Old
that's where
Yesterday.
I always battle in the comments is what's right, what's wrong. Like before, this was
And
set
watching a show like that
out of the
old
box like
on
that.
a 65-inch TV,
But it was
we used
that
to watch it
and
at
it's
19.
conscious enhancer. You said it looks cool, so after one,
Yeah, it's terrible.
Like,
It's
yeah,
also
just trying to
nice.
push it.
But,
but
with,
it's just,
with some of those things,
this is
some
why
of
they
those
sell
enhancements
TVs.
for the upscaling,
You know, it's
might help
because-
something like that. You might want to leave the sharpness
Look at
a little
that
high
in the
on
store.
something like that.
Right.
But as soon as you turn the sharpness up on
Changes.
something that's already good, you distort the image.
so out of the box, yeah,
So,
in theory, we would
lesson
have
learned,
standard
sharpness
versus
going
standard
up
versus
is not a
standard,
good
but
thing.
obviously there was no plan for this. So,
Why wouldn't you? You know?
you know,
I mean, it's I want more contrast, so I
You're
crank it.
confident that
And now
the
it's
QM8
clipped.
could do the trick on.
I
It's funny,
do,
you see
I
on
mean,
like
it's,
Well,
on the
that,
really
we won't see.
well represented, really good broadcast monitors, professional monitors, they don't have a sharpness.
A $4,000,
High-end projectors.
$5,000 TV, $6,000, come down next year at that price point, you know,
It's hard to say that it would. I mean, it's,
this, why don't they have that?
the big reason people were hesitating recently was 8K gonna do?
oh yeah.
Right? So it was hard to say, you're looking at buy a 4K TV now, bro, 8K is already out. Well, 8K's kind of turned out to be not much behind.
Yeah.
There's nothing behind it, actually. So now you're just buying a TV that doesn't perform as well as a 4K. Usually the 4K Samsung's outperforming 8K. So now people are not worried about 8K. Now we're back to worrying about MLA or whatever. So it's,
I was really worried we were gonna have a regression of the TVs because of the European power standard.
The Sony reference
I think in 8K you do have that. I do think that the
Exactly. So if I can make a
$900C is
$2,000
not as
TV
bright
like that,
as
that's
the
great.
900B.
Yeah,
And you can now.
And I think it's probably
In fact,
good, you know, but it's,
one of the
but
top
you stay away
tiers
from
I've ever seen the reference.
the 8K, and they were able to stay under the threshold with the regular 4K.
well, the 8K I think was just driving up the whole pixel density getting all the way through.
I get it.
But for me with 8K, is look, I have an 8K capable PC, but at the same time, if it's 30 frames per second, it doesn't really help me, right? So it's the and
It's cool.
the 8K doesn't help me.
it's technology's cool.
But that QM8 self-dimming in color is
You're
better
so
than
much-
this TV, which is the flagship.
I always come to this, I'm an
That
enthusiast.
TV is competing with
And I
this
always
one
come
that's
to,
a couple years old.
I always approach these things
The
by,
QN90A is
What
only
were
a
they
year old,
intending for
it's
these
100 inches, 98
they're the
inches.
artist, I'm the viewer.
But the model
Right.
number
They're
is.
not gonna go into a,
90C is the TV that's out.
go to the Picasso museum,
Processing,
blue
I
light.
don't feel like it's
It'll be a
too
step behind,
janky.
it'll be a step behind, I mean, it's, there's no
How well can I
way
tune in?
Yeah, with a Sony type.
with a Sony type, but again,
Those are the questions.
you know, what is it that you really watch? You know, older stuff, yeah, you watch old 1080p movies, it'll be fine. You know, but if you're watching like
That's a LG,
shows
that's a
from when you were
G.
7 years old, and
No, I have not seen the G.
but I've seen Sony's not be able, I don't care what anybody says, it's not gonna make any of that crap look good.
Probably get to do
Oh, yeah,
that.
Sony will make that like HD, it's not like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So, you know, what you're paying for is a fine detail. But right now with Sony, you're also paying a lot for the technology releasing late, paying for them releasing late, less models.
That's weird, like the early adopter tax, that means the less, but the late adopter tax, no.
So the late adopter tax last year, was the CES.
I probably.
I had people that asked about these today, and they researched them in depth, and they finally said, you know what, why don't they 95K? So they bought 60. 2 days later, S95 came out, and they said, G3, 1200.
Sometimes I forget.
So, the nervous breakdown. The TV's still awesome. Yes.
The OLEDs went to sleep because of static?
Jason got it.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a static image, yeah. Yeah, the OLEDs were not happy.
So here was a few days here, we were at CES and getting comments like, hey, what do you smell?
Yep.
What are you gonna bring up? And the only response we could say was, yeah. Why would you buy now when these TVs are releasing in a few months? Which gives you only 4 or 5 month window. Right? So the QM8 is not gonna really improve next year. It's a mini-LED, it's very good. It's not gonna jump in quality. There's not gonna be one next year. It's a mini-LED, it's a private technology.
Yeah, but they're not really advancing that technology.
But it's getting better.
At least you have that. Yeah, but at least you know what you're getting.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's always hard to go with the OLED if you know that those other technologies are not computing. That bothers you. It's better to spend less money. And then you're not paying for a couple $1,000. It's not your end all be all. To your point, you're justifying.
So far, so good.
Can walk away from that.
It's nice to see all the, nice to see all the TVs on this one? Yeah. Did I? I know we were talking about. Oh, I think we were playing with the local image. Yeah, we turned it on high, but still. Black's got better. It didn't help yet. That's a physical thing. That's really hard.
Well, not only that, but you'd be surprised too that at these sizes, even 83, because I do it. And if I started saying to friends, like, hey, I got 17 inch I'm not going to sell a 77 inch OLED. The first thing they say to me is, oh, so then you're like, and I saw it.
I saw 800 ones for $800.
Some don't be fish. Why was this? So then, giving them a
This is a Dolby Vision disc right here.
So what happens then with the fat?
It just ignores the Dolby Vision metadata.
So, which is taken out.
Okay, so then it would, it's not going to just give us the other TVs then because it's, right?
So you can't fit that in any.
But if it's a Dolby Vision content,
Put that in.
it's going to look better on something else, right?
Assuming you're looking at a scene where they took advantage of how Dolby Vision works.
Okay.
Well, this can't fit in my room. My home theater is pretty short. But I'm at 83, I'm at 85.
When others say
But
HDR
to me, I need better than that. I'm much better.
LG doesn't.
Right. So HDR10 Plus was their answer for Dolby Vision.
But if I'm gonna get to over 100 inches, I'd rather.
Because guess who gets paid money every time you see that Dolby Vision?
I mean, so warmer.
But they like Samsung likes the technology. So Samsung and Amazon.
To me, this looks more like.
How can we rip this off and make people pay us for it? And the technology is the same.
I don't have a picture.
That's the same idea.
Now, I don't answer all the comments.
HDR10 Plus license.
I don't know exactly. Right?
After they stole it from.
Yeah. Well, they borrow some. They were influenced by it. Yeah, they are influenced. Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, the beauty of the is I can go in. I thought I had like a. Imagine a flipbook. I can go in and
Start dying, you spend money in cars, don't sell any of the products, I don't work for anything.
can't do that at all. HDR metadata, regular HDR metadata at peak is usually in this range and in this price. One set of instructions, Dolby Vision is what's in it. But just because Dolby Vision doesn't have whoever made that movie actually used it for scenery. Now, I've put Dolby Vision in regular HDR Dolby Vision is used to its strengths. I see more detail in
Everybody
really
wants
bright
something,
explosions.
and then I don't want them to think,
Bright times in the massive
so nothing happens.
But it's supposed to be.
Michael and Ryan who are running this, they're encouraging.
You look at like at the end of this movie, actually, there's a really good scene where there's a big fire. It's called Gemini Man. It's sort of infamous for being 60 frames per second from like the normal Hollywood 24 frames per second.
It's different per video.
Yeah.
You guys get a live stream or something, trying to talk about it,
Yeah.
or you'll see me only doing the high end, where I've been looking
Now
at
the high frame rate is pretty cool for things like
and then
water.
what I would always get then,
It's very fluid. Water at 24 frames per second isn't that fluid. Yeah. So for certain things, it's good. Pretty cool. For action scenes, motorcycle chase scenes, for sports, it's awesome.
Sports, yeah, that is one place where I want.
But for
I like that.
So it's, it's controversial, but the good news about the latest HDMI spec is we can now handle 24, 30, 48, 60, and 120. So any kind of content that's being made, any frame rate,
so every time
the
we're
new
here, we
HDMI spec will handle it.
you're like, it's building friendships, building.
Now we're not
It's
gonna-
great seeing you.
You knew who I was.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I've always liked it. It's just they changed the spec.
James Flood music.
Oh, did you?
We way overdue them. Way, way, way overdue.
we're doing is technology. This is what I kind of like. Technology.
I know that. Yeah, it's been discussed. The only problem with it is the chip that you need to do that testing would put the Fox and Hound kit a bit over the price of the store, which is why you only get
It's a
the
very interesting confluence of emotions to see.
But yeah, that would be something
About a
cool if you figure out
robot,
how to add.
but I really want the robot. You know what I mean? And that's what keeps us all chasing.
Changing all the cable, changing the cables multiple times, and it ended up it was,
If you're ever really fully
I don't even remember what cable these activities were. Actually, ER certified, you someone at Pioneer had it was ER certified the same time it worked.
So when you saw me in this stuff,
And it was intermittent, we paid back something else, and I found myself buying just to buy.
Yeah, it's tough.
What's the best one?
Maybe they should give us.
Yeah.
well, just to give me something to do, or also to change it. And then I realized the only TV I already had, I barely use because I'm doing stuff like this. And then I found that if I just really sat with it and just used content,
Instead of trying to analyze it, can you just watch it?
and just use content. So I buy all this crap. And
Notice how
that's the hardest thing for us is the
that's a similar where the racing has to be on. The problem is if I go to that listen, it's just
demos. Yeah. That's what you're here. Yeah. So for me, I'm a big gamer. Spend all this money on gaming. How many games do you make? None. So I just try to sort of say,
you change the color
I'm
temperature.
trying to chase it. Can I make the one I have good? And now, because the thing is, I know too much about it.
But there's no way for me to find you. I just
Got some
increase
reason
it.
the other one did it. Now you're like, oh Jesus. So look, and now it's taking me out of the moment. So I'm learning just to go home.
So the color temperature refers to the white body.
I just know that I can't be trusted neutral. I start buying processors. You know, I have inverters, I have all this crap. I was just like, well, I want to throw this into the whole system out.
But I'm at a place now where I'm really good. It's good. I mean, the agents, they get this stuff.
Well, I mean, I'm happy that, Michael and Steve guys is always great. I mean, they're happy. I haven't seen anything. I've been in here.
Is it fun? Is it expensive? Is it pretty cool? Sure. You're not gonna see it in another studio. But then you want to watch money for anything. The sign one that's good at all.
Yeah. Oh, so you're saying so you're saying the chair itself gives you.
There's a conversation the other day I was having with a friend of mine, and you're talking about how versus how to use it. Do you not understand the technology of this AC that's not as there was a crash. It's all a video. Crash test. And they did a crash test, and after the crash test, completely mangled and destroyed. I told them the other day, the person spun out of the interstate, car accident. And you can see
Well, I mean, if I could use this, like, see what's happening. I know. Yeah, I remember. I forget the episode we spoke about this. So being a any audio guy, I didn't notice until I used to hearing the sound and the sound of the sound of you. Like, my wife says, it looks cool. Shut up, I can do that. How many people are that guy? So it's like in the room, it sounds great. But I know for me, it's like, it's like a body stack towers, okay, is that the end or is that a processor? It's my ass, you go that route. No, it's just every answer has another question. I'm like, you know what, TVs, there's the one. You didn't want to hit this area.
Yeah, see how
There's only a certain amount.
see how there's like a
and then it's gone.
maybe a wrinkle or something. You can see the seams and everything. If the black levels were too low, you can see it. It's black.
Well, audio though, friend, I bought these Legends.
That's the point. Let's get as dynamic as we can without using it.
That around 6,700. So now you're like, well, just get another amp. Well, the amps cost more than a receiver. Get rid of the receiver. Let's get a press. So now I'm in this whole big thing, and then no one can tell me it's going to sound different.
So if you got hard drive speakers, you can do it well.
This is a good this outdoor scene when it shows her face up close. You can see the difference in the skin tone. She's just a bit more saturated down here. You know, I tell people all the time, man. I mean, you're car shopping, your choices are Mercedes, BMW. There's going to be some things about the one that you like, some things about the other one you like. At the end of the day, you know, what fits you best? You're not going to get that one. Neither suck. Put it that way.
Channels I'm looking at the 2 channel for $2,200, $1,000 Marantz. Thanks a lot.
Guys, yeah, thanks for stopping by. See you around. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah. And that's where I think the big challenge is when I have that question. It's always, if I get rid of this receiver, I use this one. It might be better. Okay, for 10 grand. I mean, so I can't tell how good my speakers are because I don't know if they're powered. Yeah. I hope you helped you out. You know, let me know. Say hi in the comments, man. I will. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Let them know that we're here.
Yeah. It's good meeting you, brother. Let me know how you make out the comments. So just let me know that I can be back again. Just say, yeah, that sounds terrible. Okay, we'll do.
Yeah, yeah. Let them know that we're here. I don't know how many of them like theater guys. Yeah. It's a good chance. There's so much people here, but some people don't.
That people want me over here. Pleasure, bro.
All right. Ready, Brian? Ready for what? Let's do our thing. Okay, we are back. Jason, that was awesome. Thank you, my friend. And do we introduce you as Jason from Radio, or how does or Jason Superstar, Calibrator? Calibrator to the stars. I don't
Honestly,
know.
the probably AV Pro would be best because that kind of encompasses everything.
Pro. And
yeah.
AV Pro is the distributor for Meridio stuff.
No, we're the manufacturer.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
we're the manufacturer.
So-
So like the switch we were using,
Yeah.
and the 1x2 you guys were using over there.
I will be using that switch from now on. I love it. So we're gonna turn on the lights, and hopefully I don't get shut down for Gemini Man. But I don't think they really care because it is Gemini Man. Hey Brian, you want to play with whatever you want? Oh, Jennifer Gallet stuff with the lights on. Oh, let me see. Let's make sure my audio is still working. Hey guys, is my audio working? Audio check. I'm gonna start showing off something to you guys. If you guys are interested in the QM8, this is a big issue that I really want to show off. So, checking audio. Check, check. Yo. Okay. Since no one's complaining, I believe my audio is still good to go. You want to be on? Oh, you want to? Here, I'm going to add you right back in, buddy. All right. So, here are the people.
What's up, guys?
Thank you, guys. All right. So, QM8 fans, this is what this is what I discovered. This is a big problem. If you guys are planning to use the intelligent mode on the QM8, here's the issue, right? So, this is in its best mode, in my opinion. And the problem with the intelligent mode is this, right? If you go, actually, let's do this again. Intelligent settings do not turn on adaptive content. What happens is this. It gets too contrasty and it doesn't look as good. So I suggest you guys keep the adaptive, intelligent mode, keep all the intelligent mode stuff off on the QM8 for sure. It's just not a good look for them. Let me see. Oops. Now I gotta turn the thing off. Here we go. Yeah, turn off adaptive content. It resulted in not so bueno gradients.
Start complaining about where the money's going.
All right, so you want to take off this content? We're going to take off this content, and then Brian's going to show off what this can really do, all the TVs. So we're in a bright room environment, and our favorite disc is going to be, let's see, I am amazed that YouTube, knock on wood, has not nailed us for some of the content we put up. But let's have some pseudo fun. We're going to take a tour of the various TVs. Okay, any questions, gentlemen? We're going to show off all these TVs. We have MiniLED TV from TCL. We have a MiniLED TV from Hisense. This is $800, $1,200. This is Sony's flagship. They have a new flagship coming out, but not until September. So this is last year's flagship. The Sony A95K, it's QD OLED. So it is the most advanced generation OLED. This is LG's response to QD OLED. G3 OLED, both are excellent. Very bright OLEDs.
How much were they?
What?
How much were they?
Oh, 2,800, 3,000. All 65 inches. This one is 4,300 or so, over 4,000. It's an 83-inch G2, last year's OLED. So if you compare the G2 to the G3, you'll see in some scenes they're identical. In some, this is super bright, and that's what LG had to do to keep up with QD OLED. So now the G3 is a slight step above, arguably, in terms of specular highlights and HDR than the A95K, but then Sony's releasing its response in September. So it's always that battle, right? And then here we have the 98-inch QN90A. This is a 2-year-old mini LED technology from Samsung. So you notice it's slightly washed out because it's because you're off angle, but Brian knows how to make, Brian, you know how to make this TV shine, right? So we're gonna, so first, we're in a lit room. So in a bright room, OLED doesn't really stand out. So we're gonna do both lights on, lights off, and you guys are gonna see the differences. What I wanna do is show you skin tones real quick with the lights on, right? So you guys can see that all the TVs have been, let me play it. All the TVs have been calibrated. So the skin tones, this is as accurate as it gets. These three should be the most accurate because Jason, using his magic, got them the best they can. But you'll see subtle differences in the background, right? Some might be brighter than the rest. Some might be a slight different color. You can never match the white points exactly. Our goal is to at least match the skin tones because that's what you guys see. And so, do you guys have any preferences based on skin tones? So let me play it through. So you guys will see the different faces and so forth. As you see, each skin tone has a little bit of extra red or a little bit too pale. You cannot fix for everything. So you kind of choose the skin tones that fit what you want to watch. This skin tone I like, if a TV has a little bit too much green, you'll notice that, oh, she looks kind of pale. And so sometimes they'll tell the calibrator, wait, or calibrators use this to say, oh, wait, even though it may be quote unquote accurate to the system or to the meter, they have to go in and kind of fix it so it's not too green. And at the end, it's the skin tone that counts more than just pure accuracy. This is another difficult one too, because if there's a slight red push, then she's too tan. What I wanted to also show is your settings also have a huge effect on what the skin tones look like, because if your settings aren't correct, let's say you put on sports, right? So you're in movie mode, you go to sports, and suddenly it's a completely different looking TV. And so people buy the TV, they bring it home, not realizing, oh my gosh, it's terrible. It takes some deep diving to get the right setting. Because I would prefer sports in this mode because the contrast, you can read the scores better, everything pops and so forth, right? But for skin tones in movies, it's like, that's like a cartoon almost. So, oops, screensaver, that's not right. There you go. Yes, they are all set to their most accurate mode. So with a TCL, it's a movie mode, that's it. Custom on the Sony, this is in cinema. So LG has cinema and filmmaker. Your calibrator would choose which one to use. So we set it most accurate in cinema. The Hisense U7K is in filmmaker, cinema, and the most accurate here would be filmmaker on the Samsung. But again, if you plan to get it calibrated, then they'll choose whatever. But if you bring it out of the box, filmmaker more often than not is the one you go to. The only issue I have with filmmaker is their motion is set to off. So if you feel there's too much stutter, you have to go into the motion setting and increase the anti-judder. Oh, and I'm going to show you guys something. This is something I thought was really special is the QM8, it's black frame insertion. So if you guys don't know what BFI is, you could avoid using de-judder, which adds soap opera. If you don't want the soap opera, but you want to remove some of that stutter, the black frame insertion on the QM8 doesn't reduce brightness noticeably at all, but it makes it slightly smoother without making a soap opera. So I'll show you right now. So you guys can compare how the brightness doesn't change, because normally I do not like black frame insertion because it's too dim. So I'll show you right here. If you go to advanced, so it's under motion. All right, so it's slightly dimmer, but it's not flickering. All TVs have some form of this, they call it LED motion, but it's BFI, black frame insertion. They turn it off, brightness is up, slightly dimmer, but your motion should be better. And then if you do that, I can go to judder reduction and take it down to 0, it will look better. But normally I have it something like on 3. Personally, that's my preference. And I'll just turn that off for now. But later we'll compare and you'll see, oh, wow, it's not so bad. It's very livable. But it's the flicker that gets to me. I'm very amazed that QM8 did it without flickering, but then it's probably not as aggressive. So let's get into real content here. Okay. Okay, so just a quick intro on these grades. When you see the brightness at 10,000 nits, 2,000, 1,000, right? Here's something that I always have to give context. Everyone gets excited about 10,000 bit or 10,000 nit Dolby Vision, or just 10,000 nit HDR10. It does not exist in any source. So even though my source is going to feed them, let's say 10,000 nit HDR, it's unrealistic. If a TV doesn't do it well, okay, well, what can you do? Let's just say, for example, the G3 does it really well, but if you don't have 10,000 nit content, you're paying extra for something you'll never really appreciate, or any of these TVs. So what I normally do is I use that just to see the capability of the processor. Can it tone map 10,000 nit well? The reality is you want to start with 1,000 nit, which is where all streaming and most movies are at. So this best represents what you're going to see in real content. So we'll do 1,000, and at some point I'll show you, oh, you know what, this scene, check out what happens if I sent 10,000 nits to the TV. Then it'll end up like a projector. Oh my gosh, everything is clipping and so forth.
Is that kind of standard what TVs, a normal TV would be able to?
No. So this is what I consider a normal TV, right? This is U7K. So you'll see that even at 1000, it may have challenges looking as good as the other TVs. And I'll pause in those scenes so you guys can see. So here's a good one. I'll pause right here. All right. Where the TVs will have difficulty is it's super bright, and then there's an even brighter spot here. At 1000 nits, they all look okay, right? You have the contrast and everything, right? This scene becomes very difficult. Well, let me go to 2000 nits and you'll see. So go up to 2000 nits.
But even then they'd have like a white point, and then they wouldn't give you this other color. It tells you the image is fading out. Hey, it's a little disappear. They don't have that. So they're like,
Okay, so the G2 can't even do it, right? You don't even see it. And the G3, though, can, because next gen. And Sony does great, QD OLED. This is starting to fall behind a little bit. QM8 is still keeping up. 2000 nits are like Mad Max, Pan, some movies where you have those flash of brightness, but it's not common you have it. And so I don't make a big deal of it, but I do use it to exemplify, okay, this is where they put their money. But if you watch streaming, this doesn't matter. That's all you watch is streaming. Or you only watch Blu-ray, but it's 1080p. This doesn't matter either. But at least you know that's where your money's going. It's like getting a Ferrari, but no one takes it to the track. They drive around the block. That's these two TVs. However, you're getting some headroom because this, just in case there's that scene, the G2 just can't tone map that. But if I took it down to 600 nits, which is even more common, right? Then suddenly, let's see, 600 nits. Oh, look how good it looks. And even more content is at 600 nits. So actually, there's probably more Netflix content at 600 nits than 1000. So the headroom here is fine for most people. And if you start watching, we're going to have, let's say, Mario Brothers and all the different movies you have. This TV actually looks really good. So, but I put out challenging content that's on a benchmark disc. It's unfair to say, well, this TV is terrible, unless you're in a competition, which is what shootouts are for. But for most of us, any of these TVs at 600 nits, you're like, which one's the OLED again? But we'll kind of bring it back up to 2000, just so you can see which one's exposed to the future. Most likely will be 2000 nits at some point, but it's not today. So right here, the detail here, you lose a little bit of detail at 2000. The U7K actually has pretty good detail at 2000 nits. I'm going to rewind that so you guys can see. Okay, so I love this scene because just by counting the blades of grass and the trees in the back, you can see the differences in tone mapping. Come on in, have a seat. Any questions, just yell it out. So what we're trying to demonstrate is how these TVs at a certain brightness, in this case 2000 nits, they have difficulty resolving the details, the grass, and there are differences, right? But if I lower the brightness to the easiest one, the 600 nits, which is most content you'll find on TVs today, they all look amazing, but kind of remember how much grass you see. Let's see what happens. Right? Totally different. But is it any less bright? And so when you hear people, oh, I want my TV to get brighter. So you went from 2000 nits where you're missing grass to 600. And now you ask yourself, well, okay, it makes sense why people who grade movies for a living, why am I putting out 2000 nits and having an expensive TV suffer when I could just grade at 600 nits and everyone, even the one with the cheapest TV, can get all the detail. So on the one hand, you have enthusiasts who buy these $5,000 TVs, like, I want my 4,000 nits. Like, you're literally excluding almost everyone who doesn't have a 5,000 TV to have a crappy experience. So the common denominator would be the TVs that could do 600 nits, which in the past actually was pretty bright. Now it's like, and the question is, we are in a bright room. Is it any less bright to you? So we're going to go through the rest of the content at 600 nits so you can see. But this is trying to explain the desire for brighter. You really need to have an expensive TV to get there, but what more are you getting? So on some of these scenes, I'm going to turn down the lights so you get that HDR experience and you guys can see. Thanks. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, so in this scene, you're going to have these bright parts right here, right? So this is at 600 nits. Now, these are the scenes where you want that HDR impact. So I'm going to bring it to 1,000 because in movies where this scene is important, oftentimes it's at 1,000 nits. Make sure. Actually, this is another good one, so I'm going to pause right here. Okay. The brightest part of this scene is right here in that cloud, right? Which, you have to ask yourself, which TV gives you the most depth? What you're paying for, let's say this, it's funny, the LG G3 with MLA, that's a new technology, literally designed to make this scene look better than any other TV because they wanted to push the extra brightness and its strength is in the white. So in this scene, it really comes out at you while preserving all the shadow details, right? And this is what they did last year and they couldn't do it. And so this year, they added that extra layer and now you have it. And so this is at 1,000 nits, though. That's still within the domain of real movies. Oh, 1 second. Occasionally, can you check the chat to make sure the audio is still on? Because sometimes it dies and I don't know. Yeah. So this is where the expensive TVs kind of take over. This is an $800 TV. The details, it just, at 1,000 nits, it just cannot do it. This is a bit more expensive. It's $1,200. You're seeing more of that detail in the clouds. And of course, these are the best of what they do. But this is slightly brighter, right? Right there. This is last year's technology. And you see how it progresses from here to there. And this is a 2-year-old technology, so it doesn't have that same impact. So when you're paying for HDR, you want to get both what we call gradient detail, which is these clouds right here, where here the clouds aren't as well defined. This is about 300 or so, 380 dimming zones. This is over 1,000 dimming zones. So on a LCD TV, the number of dimming zones gets you more of that detail. On OLED, they don't need dimming zones. Each pixel is self-emissive. The dimming zones is trying to recreate what OLED does. But ultimately, because it's more expensive, you're getting this effect. This is a less expensive way of getting to, let's say this, the latest technology. Now, easy scenes like this, they all look the same. It's all about the difficult scenes where you have that wide dynamic range, right? The darkest part of the scene and the brightest part of the scene. So this one is a great one because, oops, that was on fast, go back. Okay. If you watch this, okay, I see the smoke. The reality is it's actually slightly brighter right here. But you can only see that brightness pop here and here, a little bit here, a little bit here. But these two best demonstrate that extra dimension of brightness that this TV just could not do very well. And even the G2 doesn't compare. It looks like it's uniform, where in reality, this is slightly brighter right in the center. It's subtle, but again, at 1,000 nits, I think it's a fair demand to ask of these TVs. Oh, this is a really good one. Okay, look at the sun that's rising up. You will notice, if you take a close look, actually, I'm going to invite you to come close. The sun has the most orange in the G3 and the A95K. That's why they paid more for the technology this year. Last year, it was mostly yellow. So they're all calibrated. So there's no, oh, you know, it's not calibrated. They're all calibrated. It's just the G2 cannot bring the brightness and color together. It gets bright, but the color is gone. Whereas this one, it's big and it's more, I mean, maybe slightly washed out here too. So where the money goes in these scenes, but the question is, how important is the scene to you, right? It's that 1 or 2% of those scenes, knowing it's there, that when you watch a movie, we try to find movies where these things are evident. So The Greatest Showman is one such movie, but there are a lot of movies that this isn't important at all. And also streaming, because they stream at 600 nits, well, they can all do it. What does it matter? But when it's 1,000 nits, this is what you're going to see. In the past, OLED did this scene really well. Whereas LCD TVs, it feels a little bit lifted, a little bit too bright because they couldn't get that pure black. It's getting closer, but you can kind of see the subtle differences still. This is another great HDR scene. The brightest part of the scene, how well is it, so here's the issue with this, right? How much detail do you see in the brightest part of the scene? And how much of it is just bright, but there's no detail at all? Lesser TVs, it's bright, but very hard to see any detail. The best TVs, like these two, you could see into the clouds. Like, wow, I didn't know there were like little wisps of clouds. I mean, it's detail that you probably wouldn't notice from 10 feet away anyway, but you can still see that there is a difference between the least expensive TV or even the QM8 and OLED. And this is why people go to OLED. It's that extra detail in those bright scenes, or the brightest part of those scenes. So these are easy scenes. They all look great. And if this is what most people watch, so when I make TV recommendations, I always ask, hey, what do you watch? Oh, I watch news and broadcast. Well, get the U7K. You're paying extra, but you're not appreciating the differences. I'm going to rewind this one real quick. This is a subtle scene. Look at the large stone right here. The OLED, you can see every speckle of shadow, every sparkle, best on the OLED. But on the LCD TVs, it just feels a little washed out. They're going for the brightness, the reflection, but in doing that, they lost some of the fine detail. And it almost looks like, wait, is this an 8K TV and is that a 1080p? It's all about infinite contrast And this is where the infinite contrast comes in. This is not a bright stone, but because of infinite contrast, it feels like it has a higher resolution. And this is why I love self-emissive. OLED or QD OLED. WOLED or QD OLED, it gives you that. So in the past, this is a scene that causes blooming, where on the edges, it kind of glows on the LCD TVs, so people buy OLED to avoid that. Now this scene is easy because it's only at 1,000 nits, right? This is where I'm gonna go to 10,000 nits. Let's see what happens. So 10,000 is super bright, and it forces them to go as bright as they can in the smallest part of the screen. Oh, here we go again. So the question is, do you see the slight blooming on the edge of the LCD TVs? Here you already see that it's not pure black anymore. It's slightly lifted because it's so bright, the rest of the screen kind of gets bright with it. This TV does a great job of keeping it black. But if you don't notice the slight blooming, then a lot of people say, well, I'll just get this TV. But if you do notice there's a slight halo around it, then OLED is the TV people choose. In the past, the QN90A was the best among LCD TVs at giving you blacks and controlling that blooming on the edges. But I think the QM8 has definitely caught up. And again, this is at 10,000 nits, so I'm pushing the TVs to control blooming at the brightest levels. Yeah, this is another good one right here. So you can see very slight blooming on the edges here. Whereas OLED, straight up black, no blooming. Oh, actually, I want to do this. Brian, can you turn on the lights? We can try the blooming again. But this is in a dark room. So this is like a light-controlled room, reasonable for people living in a home where you can control the lights. The question is, you turn on the lights, can you see the blooming, right? Now you have ambient light noise. Okay, so the lights are on. The blooming is less obvious on the LCD TVs. You can still see that this black level is not as good as this one. But if you're going to watch in a brighter room, it's less obvious that there's a slight blooming on some of these TVs. But then with the lights on and it's black, you have anti-reflection. So, you know, when we're done looking at this, I suggest you kind of stand up from the TV and go, wait a minute. I really see myself in front of this TV. This is anti-reflection. When it's a full screen content, you don't see it. But when it's black, then you can say, wow, in a bright room, if I see myself here, which one do I see myself the least, right? And that could be important to you, because if you have your TV set up and there's a window behind you or next to you, you're going to see that window. It doesn't have to be black to see that window. It could be a dark gray. And if that's distracting, that ends up being more important than anything else we talked about, because now you're like, I just keep on looking at that window. And so that's something to keep in mind, because if you're in a bright room, that might end up, anti-reflection might end up being the most important part of your purchase. So every TV maker changes their anti-reflective coating on every model. One year the flagship is great, the next year the flagship did something, oh my gosh, it's horrible. For example, Samsung used to have this reputation where its anti-reflective is so aggressive, it's like a rainbow that crosses the screen. But then this year they removed it. The rainbow is less aggressive, but people don't care because it's so effective at removing glare. Whereas others, they want something more subtle. LG is consistently subtle but good. I find the anti-reflection on the TCL and the QM8, it doesn't quite match it. And you guys could stand in front of it and see, oh. But I can see you in it. Yeah, exactly. Right here you can see everything, right? But here it's more muted. And if that bothers you, that's more important than the actual contrast or anything else, actually. But that's hard to see in a dark room where everything is perfect. This is more of the realistic room condition that we have in your living room space or whatnot. So we're at 10,000 nits. I'm going to lower it back to 1,000. Let's make it realistic. So in this scene, just so you guys, if you're wondering, the very tips of the red tulips, the little white reflections, are the brightest part of the scene. The yellow's bright, but the tips is where they made the super bright specular highlights. And so the question is, which TV feels like it has that depth? The difference between the darkest areas of the scene, like here, and then the brightest areas like the yellow tulip and the reflections. That's the TV that does that HDR impact the best. And some people don't notice that, but just wanted to point it out. So if you look at the U7K, obviously it's less expensive. It's a little bit more washed out, down in the darker areas, whereas as you increase the price up to OLED, then it becomes that depth that feels almost three-dimensional. So this is another good one. As the scene gets brighter and brighter, notice how it went from that gold color to slightly washed out yellow. This is why LG had to introduce this TV. Last year it was the G2 versus the A95K. Because of this color luminance, G2 lost. It preserved the color, but this year, an upgrade, now it's a match. And so a lot of times people are like, I don't want to upgrade a TV every year. 5 years later, imagine what improvements you have. It's an ongoing process of improvement that we point out to the TV makers, because last year we said, wait, look what happened here. It's slightly yellow. I mean, it's kind of like the pixel people thing, right? Like, wait, is that really important? Well, now that you know, you can't unsee it. That's the problem. And so we're going to end with this scene because it's so hard to do right. So underneath the boardwalk, where you see the little columns below, the differences tell you kind of like the different technologies, right? I think the G3 does the best. Everyone else is a little bit different. And Sony actually does it pretty well as well. Also look at the specular highlights. How bright do the brightest parts of the scene get? And how much color is in there? That's the color luminance, right? So it feels like here, it's a little bit too bright down there. This is actually pretty good for an LCD TV. But it's still a little bit brighter than these two. Just a little bit. And here, around the center of the Ferris wheel, it's a little bit lifted on the LCD TV, just a little bit. So lifted meaning it's a little bit brighter than it should be. But these are subtle things where does it take you away from the experience? And if it doesn't, save money. Actually, also, off angle. So On angle, all the TVs look great, which you are right now. If you go off angle a little bit, then you'll see, oh, it's a little bit washed out, colors are washed out. But if you're just watching in front of the TV by yourself, then oftentimes you might not have to go to OLED and pay more and get that same impact. Okay, I'm gonna put in some spectacular movies and see what happens here. So let's put in real content, right? Stuff that people really watch. Let's put in the #1 movie of 2023. So let's see. What is this movie that is so popular in 2023? Mario Brothers. But it's also amazing. So we talked about all the technical, blah, 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 but ultimately it comes down to content. How does it look? Like, which one do you like with real content in a normal living room environment, right? Is it size? Do you get more immersion from the size? This is super big, this is somewhat big, and from this distance, it's a little bit small to me, right? So you're about maybe 8, 9 feet away. I would have to go at least with an 83-inch from 9, 10 feet away, or even a 98-inch, right? So size comes to the equation, not perfect viewing experience if it's not big enough. I'm going to pause on a scene that has a lot of different colors so you guys can see the differences. This is actually not this one. So here's a good scene. We're in a brighter room, and you're like, wait, I can't see the details very well, right? So we're going to talk about picture settings really quick. So on an LG in a brighter room, if this scene's a bit too dark, you can get into a different movie mode. Okay. And so the question is, technically, this is inaccurate, but which one is more pleasant to see in a bright room? I mean, it's Mario Brothers, for heaven's sake, right? What does it matter that the creator intended it to be like this, right? So the Sony G2 and the A95K, accurate, slightly less accurate, but you see all the detail. Do you want that? I mean, there's no wrong answer, really. If you can't see it and you're not enjoying it, then you do what you have to do. So I'm going to leave the G3 on Cinema Home because we are in a bright room. Cinema Home, the home, is implying that in a home, the lights are on. Cinema is implying, well, you're in a cinema situation and the lights are off, but we're in a bright room. So I'm going to have the G3 in Cinema Home so you can see, actually, I'll put the G2 as well. So that way all the LGs are in Cinema Home. Here it is. So sometimes you can make your TV adapt to the room you're in. And so now in a bright scene, it doesn't matter that you're in Cinema Home or not, right? They're all looking bright. It's in those darker scenes that Cinema Home really helps. Oftentimes, at the end, let me ask you guys, what TVs are impressing you the most? Because I have my opinions, but I live and breathe TV. So you have any questions about why a TV looks a certain way or settings or anything? This is the time to play with settings. Questions? No questions?
More than immersive experience, which I know is relative to your distance away from the TV.
So you're enjoying the larger size?
Can't help, I just gravitate towards the bigger screen.
Yeah.
I feel like
The bigger screen. And so the crazy thing is, we're used to projectors. This has more contrast than the best projector. The Z9, $25,000, $24,000. Obviously, it gets a lot bigger. But if you only need 98 inches, I agree with you, right? And so the question is, well, if off angle, it's a little bit. And so this is where we're going to turn off the lights and go off angle. Is it that bad? But it's this way. So in my family, I have an ultra short throw. And it's not a great ultra short throw. Nothing special, $2,500. It's on a white wall, 110 inches. But with the lights off, my family prefers that. Even though I have the A95K, it's too small. We want to be 9 feet away from a 100-inch TV. And they enjoy it more. They watch Netflix, streaming. And it's like, wow, okay. Then there you have it. So I have an OLED that sits next to an ultra short throw. That's nothing special. So sometimes we underplay the importance of immersion. Oh, this is a good way to introduce Brian. Brian, he is famous for being the big boy only TV. So I'm going to hand it over to you. I want you to play with the Samsung Fun mode so they can see that in this accurate mode, it's not impressive. But what happens when it's in fun mode, right?
So we have the discussion always about accuracy and what's deemed accurate. These are all calibrated. They're all in their movie presets. Samsung is the #1 TV brand in the world in terms of sales by a lot. And they simply are because, and it's not wrong, but if you look at the QN90A MiniLED versus the rest, it doesn't really appear to be brighter. It just seems washed out. Doesn't seem to be three-dimensional. But a lot of times when you walk in the store, they look like that. And most people watch their TVs in this preset, which is what they ship in. And if you were to walk in the room now with the lights off, you might appreciate that one better than the others. So I'm not a student of things being accurate all the time. I'm assuming of it's your TV, watch it how you want. Mini LEDs, which are these three, do not stand a chance in that cinema mode versus the OLEDs. So I think they should play to their strengths. Now I talk about price. Something like the TCL QM8, which is the top left hand, for 85 inches, $2,200, you can get that, which it costs even less than the 65-inch QD OLED. So what we discuss a lot is about why you buy, what it's for, what you're using it for, where are you watching it, content dependent. So that's why we're showing you all these different brands and different technologies. Are you guys TV guys, projector guys? TV. All right, projector? Okay. What TV do you have now? Tell me. Oh yeah, plasma. Well, there's a reason why people have old plasmas. The plasma is still king. Plasma is still the most natural, still has the best blacks. They do last. They were, I'm sure, very expensive when you bought yours. Yeah. Still looks good, and it speaks to exactly the kind of content a lot of people watch. A lot of people do watch content on a plasma looks good. All content looks good. It's when LCDs became very bright that content stopped looking good. It was too bright, too dark. We are in a brighter room now, but it depends. Gaming, movies, whatever you like. Sizes. A lot of TVs are heading this size, but now you're encroaching on projectors. Projectors 105, 120. And in TVs, who do you give this to when you move up, when you upgrade? It sounds interesting, but it's very hard to sell a TV. You can sell a speaker, you can sell a receiver. Someone has to come see this at your house, on Facebook Marketplace or whatever you're doing. So. Now, when you guys are looking at these while Fomo was talking, any of these that you like the best or anything that stands out to either one, any of you guys? Like the middle one. What do you like about it? Okay. So what's interesting is the top right hand one, this is the A95K QD OLED. This is regarded as one of the best TVs in the world. And it's priced as such. But not one person has walked in this room today for the last 7 hours and said, that's the one I want. Which one do I want? Oh, of the four? For me, the one that I like the best would be the bottom right-hand corner. It's the LG G3. Oh, the most people like, actually, the most people like the QM8, which is the top left-hand, which is one of the cheapest in the room.
I think price for me is the big factor when, like, I already have a projector set in my room.
Yep.
Except for, like, the living room. Like, when we were going through all the tests, right, like, I didn't really notice it until Fomo pointed it out that it was there. I don't think I would notice it at home.
The blooming?
Yeah, it was just all the different,
The different nuanced issues with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, the cheapest one that he pointed to first, I was like,
That's the one, yeah.
that's the one, yeah.
But what's interesting with TVs, though, again, is that's why I put this one in a more similar preset, is that TV is looking to be this one. That's its goal. This one is larger, but the QM8 is bright, it's colorful. The blacks are good enough, and the eye still is drawn to it. And then you add in the fact that it's a quarter of the price or half the price, then okay, I'll take it. And the best part about something like that, if you buy it in a few years, you don't love it, move it into another room. But if you spend $5,000-$6,000 on something, yeah, and it bothers you, you know. And for you guys being speaker guys and home theater guys, it's about building around your display and getting your speakers, your processors, things of that nature.
What's the largest of this?
85.
85?
For now, I mean.
And this is 83?
83, yep.
Yeah. Do you see, like, as they get, like, something like this, as they get bigger, like, is it the same quality, or as they get bigger, like, you start to lose something?
So this is a 98-inch, same technology, mini-LED, it's a VA panel, and it is definitely softer. I mean, we are very close. If you even sat back 3 seats, it would be better, you know. However, if this was an 85-inch OLED with the micro contrast, the micro contrast is simply not, see the blacks are here. The blacks within the image is micro contrast, the fur, the feathers, things of that nature. The OLEDs, the LEDs just can't get deep enough for that. So obviously when it's larger, you will lose that detail. But a lot of projectors look like this. They have that, you know, they're not as bright, but they have that softer but more filmic look to them. And they're 120 inches. I mean, how can you go wrong?
Yeah. The black level is definitely way better than mine.
Projector? Yeah, yeah. But what's funny in TVs, we didn't even think about black bars until 5 years ago when they were purple. They've always been kind of, well, on plasma, you always had black bars. But all of a sudden, everybody wanted to know, are the black bars black? It never mattered to anybody before until the TVs got so bright. But what's good about these companies here, like TCL and Hisense, is they step up their game. They drive the prices down of the larger manufacturers or the higher end. But it also pushes them to compete and push their technology harder, which is why you see QD OLEDs and MLA OLEDs versus just the standard OLEDs. They get incrementally better every year, but now we have big jumps because the cheaper brands are right on their tail.
Is there a loss in, I don't know, the quality of, you know, like you talked about, that TV forever. I've got a TV that has lasted forever, like these was it TCL?
TCL, I mean, the thing is, again, with the price, if you walk up to them, you're free to touch them. There is a build quality difference. There is going to be, you know, they are going to last longer. The power, you know, the electronics in them, who know if they're the same quality. But then again, things are all made in different factories these days, and they're all made at different sizes or made in different factories. So we're seeing even from the top brands like Sony or Samsung, the big ones made somewhere else, the little ones made somewhere else, you know. But for Samsung, it's hard. That S90C that we have here is only 3 days old. It died yesterday. You know, so reliability is a big part of it. But again, with the money you save, you expect it to last as long as your plasma. I'm sure the plasma was very expensive. How many years ago when you bought it? Yeah, but back. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, the plasmas were like heaters. Yeah, they're a little bit better. I mean, I would imagine, except when you get here. Then 8K TVs require more, so they've been kind of on top of that as far as the European have cut that. So 8K is not as much a factor. But 8K is the first real resolution without a format behind it, meaning there's no promise. When 1080p came out, there was always the whisper of a format coming out, DVD, Blu-ray. 8K kind of launched without that, so people really didn't gravitate towards it, and nor should you. I mean, half the TV you still watch is a cable box at 720p. But then that's where the up conversion of, say, a Sony, that detail is what you're paying for. But recently, TCL and Hisense have gotten better at that processing. They've caught up to some degree, not quite there. But is that worth an extra $3,000 to you? So price-wise, you ask yourself, would you rather have an 85-inch left-hand TV in the corner or that 65-inch to the right? I can't make the 65 any bigger for you. It's just what it is. But is the loss of detail or image quality in something this large worth? This TV was $20,000 at launch. It's now down to like 12.
Do you think, you said that 8K is the first format without like a format behind it. Do you think the move to streaming and gigabit internet and H.265 compression, will we ever actually see a new resolution come out with a format again?
I mean, you would hope so. That would be, but the difference is where is that going to be? Is that at a certain region, certain country? You know, some internet is still lacking in other countries. It's almost nothing. You know, I'm a YouTuber. Fomo's a YouTuber. There's plenty of YouTube channels in other countries that takes them a day to download a game. So 8K resolution, they pushed it forward as something to sell. It's as simple as when you walk into a store and you see 4K, and then you see 8K. That's really what made the person say, okay, I want this newest thing. But they just never followed up with a disc format. I mean, how many of you guys have discs at home? Right, very few. You still have some, right? But most people are streaming. So 8K never caught on. As far as gaming, the new consoles can't do 4K, let alone 8K. PCs can't do 8K. I have a PC that can do 8K at 30 frames per second, you know. But it was too soon, and now it's been out too long. It's been out for about 6 years. So if it's not taken on, and I'll prove it, is the top manufacturers' TVs are 4K. Where typically when you move to a new resolution, you fade out the older format. So when 4K was announced, you had 1 year of decent 4K, and then, or high end, then you had high-end 1080p. Then the next year, low-end 1080p. They kind of phased them out. Now they're still investing in 4K. So they're letting you know they're going to keep going with it. Point of fact, there is no real 8K QD OLED or MLA OLED. So interesting is the Z2, which is the LG best TV, one of the best TVs in the world, does not come in 8K. Or I'm sorry, does not come in MLA, which is their next technology. It's $30,000.
What's this one right one here?
That is a LG G3.
Is that the bigger version of LG?
That is a G2. So the reason why we have a G2 at 83 is that micro lens array technology that came out with the G3s wasn't at this size, so it was pointless to have one. So we have, if you guys are just walking in, we have the 65-inch TCL QM8, top left. Bottom left is the Hisense U7K. They're both MiniLED technology. Top right is last year's leader, Sony A95K QD OLED. Below that is the LG G3 MLA WRGB OLED. Middle is the G2 WRGB OLED, and then you have the Samsung QN90A at 98 inches. So your outside three TVs are all LEDs. The TCL and the Hisense are your value brands that are now starting to kind of conquer the world as they're a quarter of the price.
The new chip you were talking about on the LG3, is that also available in the C3?
The MLA does not. No, the MLA is only on the 55, 65, and 77-inch G3. It's a shame because you have a gallery series, which is, it doesn't come with the stand. You have to mount it. It has a built-in mount, but the C series is without it. They're still excellent, but that brighter image, more colorful image is only on those 3 sizes.
The C2 and the G2, they share the same hardware, right?
They do. Yeah, the G2 had a heat sink. It was a bit brighter, but the G3 does pull away, and you can see it in these 2 images here. It's more evident when you compare a 77-inch G3 with MLA versus an 83-inch.
So the bottom right one has MLA, the other one.
Does not. I'll turn the lights off so you guys can see it a little bit better. How you doing, Mark?
Doing good.
How you doing, guys?
Brian, is the Samsung vivid mode or nano mode?
I think it's back in standard. Hold on.
It's the sale.
Yeah, it's in standard. So what we were saying is the G3 in the bottom has MLA technology. The G2 does not. Now, which do you guys prefer? You guys that are watching, what do you see that you like the best? If you're going to look at the micro, or the, say the mini LEDs, you have to come around and see them dead center. They do better. Where you're standing now, as you come to the Samsung, it'll definitely lighten up a little bit as you get in front of it. Same with the Hisense and the TCL. They will look better. That's kind of the strength and weakness. Off angle, the color shift is evident. The OLEDs, you can come right off to the side. They look exactly the same. What's that? Yep. The shame with the G3 is it comes in that one form factor, and then without the C series, and then the G3, which is the largest. It's hard to recommend buying the largest, most expensive one without that technology. That's the only thing that kind of sucks, actually. It's That's the bottom left, yeah. That's the U7K. That is their second in their lineup. It goes U8, U7, U6. So it's like kind of entry mid. Now, as far as gaming, the TCL and the Hisense have 144 hertz. However, the resolution's cut a little bit. G series 4K 120.
Let me take the LG OLEDs down to cinema mode. Continue, my friend.
I guess we're at a different mode. Oh, you moved them up to something else? Which ones are you looking at? Just looking at the Hisense?
Yeah, between these bottom 2.
Yeah, so the LG, that's the G3. So the Hisense U7K is kind of a mid LED, where the QM8 is at a higher end, more zones. So the C2 and the C3, they're incrementally better each year. They have a little bit of a brighter APL, so their brightness is up about 10%, but that's processing. They're really the same panel. They're EVO panels.
Okay.
The G3 has that micro lens array, which is brighter. It's something they've added, but it's only in those sizes. So if you're looking, what size are you looking for?
65 and under.
Yeah, I would say 65. The G3 is easily a good deal better than the C3 at the same size.
Okay.
But if you were going to go price point and say, okay, am I going for a larger, but this is where it gets interesting. If you want to go larger, then you would go with a 77-inch C3. That extra size will beat that little bit of picture quality difference. So when I compared the 77-inch G3 to the 83 without the MLA, because it was large, it did beat it easily. But because the size difference is so substantial, it doesn't stand out. Yeah.
That's like I'm looking even at Micro Center, and they have the 77 C2s there. Well, not anymore. I think
Yep.
It definitely was a winner for me.
Yeah.
I didn't need a TV that big for the room it was going into.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, but the 65 is still the sweet spot, G3, and the S95C, which is the Samsung QD OLED, is also excellent. Though I'm not happy with Samsung right now because our S90C died yesterday. It's only 3 days old, so I'm not going to recommend them today.
Yeah.
Hard time recommending them. I mean, nothing happened to it. We had it calibrated, ready to rock, and that's the S90 back there.
Thank you.
My pleasure. How's it going, brother? Good. Doing good. Good to see you, man. My pleasure. Thanks for stopping in, guys. Guys, have any questions?
What model did you say that?
This is a Samsung QN90A. It's a mini LED. So it's an LCD, essentially. And then the 3 inside are different versions of OLEDs.
You said that Poison is TCL.
Yep.
The other one, I forgot.
TCL QM8 is in the top and is very similar to what Samsung has done the last few years. Kind of same type of picture quality, punchy, very vibrant. And then Hisense is below it. That's the U7. We had the U8 coming, but it got lost in transit. So that would be the direct competitor.
You said the Samsung 90C, you're going to have that.
That's the S90C. So that's actually the QD OLED. That's this one. This is an A95K. The S90C is the same type of panel, which is a quantum dot OLED, and it died yesterday. So, yeah. It does look similar between these two. You know, it's a bright poppy.
I guess your opinion, if you're looking at like the Samsung QD OLED versus like the G3, and you do a lot of gaming.
It's a great question. I would always go Samsung or G3 the last number of years, or LG the last number of years. Samsung has an excellent game bar, and they also do 144 hertz. Ultra wide support, if that matters to you. Even though it's not an ultra wide panel, you can actually crop it to make it look that way. The fact that the G3 has, and they have different presets that you can choose gaming wise that look good, but they're pretty much a tie as far as picture quality and gaming. But if you like 144 hertz or that ultra wide, then I would check out the Samsung. Having a hard time recommending it as it died in front of me, so it's hard for me to say how reliable they are. But what's killing it is the S90C is a step down from the S95, but it's almost equally as good and it's a fraction of the cost. So then that puts you in a spot to say maybe I'll go 77. And that's what we do with the yin and yang of pricing. QM8 is $2,200 at 85 inches. Which means that it's about the same size or same price, if not a little bit cheaper than the 65-inch QD OLED. So you may lose a little bit of detail, a little processing, but for 85 inches, like, ah! And while these two have 140 hertz gaming, they do cut the resolution a little bit, so they do look a little softer. Well, what's interesting with TVs versus all the other technology you've seen is that there is only a certain amount of panels every year to choose from. It looks like there's a lot when you walk into a store, but there's only 2 QD OLEDs. There's only 2 OLEDs from LG. So it's easier to choose speakers. It's endless. And speakers, they don't make new ones every year. So you're like, what was this last year's, this year's? So it's interesting. But for a consumer, a choice of saying the G3, I like it, but maybe I go back last year. That's always a conversation. Maybe go back and get last year's larger display.
The upper right is what?
That is a Sony A95K QD OLED. The bottom is an LG G3 MLA OLED. Now they're in their presets. These are the most accurate presets. They're all calibrated. live that much longer, I don't think.
Already done? Oh, okay. All right. Hey, Brian. Let's see. What are you going to do next? Let's turn on the lights. You want to put another content? Mad Max? Good? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we're going to turn on the lights so you guys, or you guys want to keep the lights off or on? How do you guys watch your TVs? Lights on? Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, right? So what, is the Sammy on standard or what? All right. Let's get all the TVs in their best bright room mode. So this is your typical lighting condition, and that means a lot of the ambient light hides the flaws of the LCD TVs, which means that the larger 98-inch TVs are on your list because this year TCL is introducing that TV in a 98-inch size, but then Samsung is responding with a 98-inch Q80C, which is around 7,000, I think, right now. So 10,000 at launch, later in the fall, probably dropping to 9,000 street prices, 7,000 or 8,000 right now available. And then TCL has an older 98-inch, probably 5,000, 6,000 right now. So as these 98-inch TVs starts dropping, if your room is bright, you just watch sports, whatever. I think it's definitely a good buy for immersion because this kind of fairly represents image quality that you're going to expect moving forward. So this is a 2-year-old TV, and it's Samsung's first mini-LED, lots of dimming zones. But the other TV companies, the budget, value-minded, Hisense and TCL, have caught up in many ways. And now that they're offering 98 inches also, sometimes I'm like, in a bright room, you want brightness, you're watching mostly sports, news, streaming, I say go with the size. Now these are definitely good, critical movie-watching TVs. You plan to get it calibrated. Your calibrators will love you because you have all these amazing calibration settings, whereas the TCL and the Hisense, calibration's all over the place, right? But after calibration, can you really tell the difference that one of them isn't calibrated? It still gets within a percentage point. So calibrators are a very particular lot. They want that 0.1% accuracy. As long as it's within 2%, you're not going to be able to tell the difference in terms of color. Even side by side, it's hard. So for me, it's not that big of a deal. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to put the LG into cinema home mode, which is so cinema is your dark room mode, which you were in. So if you go to cinema home, it's a touch brighter, but it doesn't ruin the image, so to speak. A lot of people are like, I'm never going to use cinema home. But if you're in a bright room, I think it just makes it a bit easier to watch. This one especially watch. So in cinema home, it's just a little bit brighter. And the Sony, I put it in brightness preferred. Oh, wrong one. What am I doing? Let's try this again. So this is dynamic mode. It's like the fun mode. This is why you get the Samsung oftentimes, right? And so this is completely inaccurate. It's not calibrated. It's dynamic mode, but you'll be surprised. Most Samsung owners, they buy a Samsung so they could put it in dynamic mode. And for something like Mario Brothers, it doesn't matter. So that's also something you might want to consider. If you watch a lot of cartoons, like, you know what? I'll try something fun. It also gives it more contrast because it plays with a contrast enhancer. Gaming, console gaming or PC gaming? Okay, so gaming is a hot mess, mostly because there's so many things to look at. If it's console, start with console gaming, PS5, Xbox Series X, the latest consoles, right? All these TVs actually can do it. the question is, how well do they do it? They will run VRR, 4K 120, all of that. But you're going to have to play with the settings to get it right. In the past, it was maybe just the C or the G series that did it really well. I would not hesitate choosing any of these for basic gaming. The difficulty is when you push to 144 hertz. Can it do this? On a PC, you're pushing the performance, FreeSync Premium Pro with VRR enabled. If you want everything enabled and you want the best latency, you have to go with OLED. But if you don't need all of that, and if you're okay with VRR on or off, the issue is with LCD TVs, if you have VRR and 4K 120, then the HDR is not quite as good as it could be. And it's also game specific, right? Some people, like I played Dirt 5 in the QM8, I thought it was great, but other people, same settings on a different game, they didn't like it as much. So it's almost as if you have to shop with games in mind. And in future games, who knows? So for performance, I don't want to say future-proof, but consistency in the future, I personally would choose an LG or even a Sony OLED is good, as well as the Samsung's flagship S90C, S95C, which isn't here today, or it's over there, but the S95, S90C, as well as the LG G2 or G3, G2, C2, C3, they will all make those games look very well. The Sony is fine, it's just not as convenient because changing game modes on the Sony, this year they've addressed that, but years before you had to manually switch, choose your poison, go into low latency mode and all that stuff, right? So most gamers will not choose a Sony because if I'm gonna game anyway, I'll just get a G3 or G2. But this year you have more options. You have the Samsung S90C and S95C, which I think are great. So I personally would choose those, but definitely if you know exactly what kind of games you like, you might want to go on the internet and find those exact people. Well, what do you guys like? And then they'll tell you, well, this is good here and this is good there. It becomes kind of tribal almost. So, but you can't go wrong gaming on, let's say, a G3 or a S90C or S95C. I mean, it's very rock solid. But otherwise, if you're a casual gamer, even the QM8's fine. So it really depends on how deep. And if you don't know what you're missing, you might not even know there's anything wrong with it. So that's another thing too. So yeah.
I've been pretty happy with the LG OLED.
Well, which one do you have?
I've got the C9 and the CX.
The C9 was one of the last very bright OLEDs. And then they got worried about burn-in, and so they started, aggressively doing stuff. So that's no burn-in, right?
No burn-in.
See? Yeah, hold on. I say hold on to those things until they break, because by the time you replace it, imagine.
I wasn't thinking about replacing it, then the MLA stuff comes out, and I'm like, what am I missing?
Yeah. Okay. So, this is a great point. On benchmark content, you see the MLA just killing it, but then on regular content, this is the G2, this is the MLA. They're close, you see the brightness right here, right? It kind of pops a little bit more. So, and it's in Cinema Home, to be fair, and so is the G2, but that's what you're paying for. It's that extra punch. Is it worth the upgrade, though? See.
The C9 though would be processing. The up conversion from the C9 is a lot
Upscaling,
better.
yes. So
Upscaling is light years better than it was.
that's a great point, Brian.
LG lagged behind. LG lagged behind a lot at the time in up conversion. That was their weakness. So you probably saw an increase with the CX. They're light years better with the C3 and the G3. Just in terms of up conversion, detail, process, and they actually caught up to Sony last year. Sony pulled away again slightly, but that detail is what's important to many people.
And you're talking about more like maybe some more stream quality.
Yep, that or even high-end quality. Yeah, so even the detail within high-end quality, they're better at. It's always that AI processing that they're getting better at. You saw that with the CX where you kind of turn it on, it learns what you like. Now this TV has expression enhancer, it has different AI functions. We have them set very accurately. You can make them look a lot more punchy. The C9, again, as Fomo was saying, is the last real vibrant LG. Yeah, the C8 and C9 were very vibrant. The problem is the C8 was notorious for burning in. C9, not so much, so they definitely dialed it back with the CX. But I think if you were to get to, what size do you have?
Really close, like
Yep.
4 feet. So
Yeah.
I have a chair that I can just move up into the bedroom, like an old retro console in my
Yep.
bed.
Yeah. So I would say upgrading, we rarely upgrade the same size, simply because, as Fomo mentioned, in a lot of content under 1,000 nits, they look the same, other than older content. So you'd want to get the actual upgrade of size, like a 77-inch, with the better detail. But it's hard to say if you have a C9 that functions well to say, hey, get a G3. And the G3 has to be mounted because it doesn't come with a stand. Yeah. 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 And the gaming, that goes back into detail and streaming and, you know, the processing on gaming helps as well. You game on PC? Oh, good. That's all right. We don't need to keep
That's okay, just keep on talking.
I don't need the microphone for it though. It's for the online anyway.